Are you ready?
Let's get it. Here we go.
It's about to go down. Real Talk with Pasha B.
All right. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Real Talk with Pasha B. No matter where you are, good morning, good evening, or good afternoon. Depending on where you're listening, we know that you could be anywhere, but you're right here with us. And I am joined today by no other than Sheneka. Hey, Sheneka.
Greetings, Pasha. How are you?
I am great. I thought we weren't going to be able to hear you with your raggedy computer equipment.
I don't even appreciate this negativity. This happened behind the scenes. No need to share with.
We share. We always share. They are with us. We are with them. I had to share that. But anyway, Sheneka's audio is working. So thank the Lord for that. Sheneka, how have you been? It's been a while.
It has been a minute. And this podcast is long overdue. I know you and I have discussed having estate planning as a topic, and that will be our topic of discussion today. And we've been discussing this back and forth for about a year now, right?
It's been a long time.
Been a long time.
Just like I just tried to shame your raggedy ass audio, you just shamed us with holding off on this topic for over a year. So thanks for that. But no, it has been a while, and I think it's well needed. So.
Yes. And with that, I will introduce our guest today. We have with us Arnitra Briggs, Esquire. Let me add that Esquire.
Put that respect on that name.
Absolutely. Welcome, Arnitra. How are you?
I'm great. Hi, everybody.
Wonderful, yes. Wonderful. I think with us putting off this topic or this particular podcast is probably reflective of how people handle estate planning.
I believe so.
In general.
Right.
In general. It's like, I don't want to talk about it. Let's do something fun. That's not fun. Let's do something else. So, yeah, we're going to face this head on. And I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your background, including what inspired you to become an attorney and specifically to focus on estate planning.
Again, I'm Arnitra Briggs. I born and raised in Miami, Florida. I am a proud graduate of Florida A&M University, 1997, and Florida A&M University College of Law, 2008. Becoming an attorney is something I've always wanted to do, even as a child. It was a dream deferred. When I graduated in 97, I didn't do well on the LSAT and I didn't get into law school. I went back to Miami, worked for several years, got my master's degree, and then that dream deferred became a fruition. I got accepted in 2005, and the rest is history. Estate planning, some of the services is one of the services that I offer. And most of the services that I offer, they actually found me because of the people that I'm around. I am also a minister with the church that I grew up in. And so I wear several hats and continue to wear several hats in that capacity. So I was always being approached by different people at conferences about the need for a will or just questions about a will. And as you get those questions, you start, looking into it for different people, and you start saying, okay, this is probably something I need to start offering and getting paid for. Because that part, because, you know how we do, we tend to, ask questions of each other that we know would cost if we ask someone else. So that really is what propelled me to offer those estate planning and the other services that I offer. So it pretty much really found me because people were so interested privately about what the next steps need to be and what they need to do.
Okay, good stuff. Pasha, what's on your mind?
Well, no, I was sitting here and just, I'm going to say mulling over or even processing her story of how she got from college to law school. And it was inspiring for me. I was sitting here about to go totally off topic with, this is what I'm talking about. This is like a success story in itself. So I was just sitting here and kind of in my mind, thinking about that. But as I digress, since Sheneka threw it to me, I would like to ask the question. So when we think about estate planning, for those who may not be familiar with it, can you just break down a little bit of exactly what that means? What is estate planning?
So basically, estate planning is just determining what your assets are and what you want those assets, how do you want those assets to be distributed upon your death? And that's basically what your estate plan is. Estate planning also includes making sure that your children are taken care of even while you're alive. Like, so you want to start building financial security with your kids and talking about banking accounts and savings accounts and how we need to save our money. All of that is involved in estate planning. The part that I focus on the most is wills and trust. But all of those things, those issues encompass estate planning when you're talking about gift taxes, inheritance taxes, all of those things are part of it. But what I focus on mainly is offering wills and trust, and basically just getting people to understand that you have more than you think you have. I'm often approached about the house. They're not talking about the jewelry in the jewelry box. Nobody's talking about the china in the china cabinet. And so they always come to me about the house. And I think that's just a cultural thing among us. That we think that way, but we have to start thinking broadly about those other expensive items that we have and start inventorying those items. We don't typically do that. And it's almost like pulling hairs with a lot of my clients, telling them, no, you have to inventory everything. If you're going to pay me, I need to offer you the best service that I can. I know you're concerned about the house, but what about the china? What about the jewelry? There are some expensive items. What about that
closet full of Air Jordans that we have?
Yes, and those Louis Vuittons and those Gucci purses. Those things have value.
I think that was shade, though, over here. What I think that was. Okay. Yeah, I felt the shots. I felt them, heard them, seen them, and felt them. But we're going to let you go ahead.
And so the number one issue that a lot of people have when they come to me is who they don't want to get their stuff. And so when you're thinking about estate planning, if you have worked a long time and you know that there are some people in your family that are irresponsible, this is one of the reasons why you want to make sure you have an estate plan. A lot of people, that's their number one fear. I do not want my no good cousin or my no good brother to get what I've worked years for. I want to ensure that it goes to my goddaughter or my parents are taken care of.
And I think this is a good point to ask the question because you're going right into it. So if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a will, if you don't have any directions, what normally happens with someone's belongings?
So what normally happens is if you pass without a will, your property will pass through a process called intestate through probate court. And it will vary based on your jurisdiction where you live. I am licensed in Florida only. So a lot of the stuff that I could talk about will be about Florida law. But typically it will pass intestate and it will be distributed based on that particular jurisdiction. In Florida, it's per stirpes. So if there's, say for instance, you have Dan who has $100,000 and he dies without a will and he's not married. If he has no children, but his parents are still alive, then that money will go to the parents, the surviving parents. If he has surviving children, the monies will go to the surviving children. So that's typically how it's handled, but it can get held up. The cost of that, it can get held up in probate court. Then you have to pay the creditors first. So what a will will do, it is just an instrument to say, this is where I want these monies to go. I want this amount of money to go to this person. I want this amount of money to go to this person. That's the importance of having a will. A will also forces you to inventory your assets. And that's the most important thing. Because like I said before, a lot of people just don't know. They've never sat down and taken an inventory of their assets. They're just looking at the bigger picture, which is typically the house and the land.
And I just want to say this real quick. I know you said that it typically goes to probate if there isn't a will in place, but let's talk about the real. What happens is the family come to the house, they drop off their check sodas, they drop off their pound cake.
Wow.
And then they start picking up stuff. Can I have this? Can I have that? And stuff just starts disappearing from the household.
Mm-hmm.
And then more immediate families start catching attitude. Hold up. Who told you can have that? Who said you can have this? That's the real.
Right. And that's why I said it's important to have an inventory. So if somebody has inventoried all of their belongings, when you have these repass, first of all, you should not be having a repass at the decedent's home.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's a part of the estate plan. Why are we doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody should be doing.
That's what we do.
That's what we do. That's a cultural thing.
That's not what my family does. You're not coming over here.
Right. That's something that should not happen.
Because it allows for that to happen. It allows for that
to happen. Exactly. And you got to remember, people are grieving.
Yep.
So they're not really worrying about, their brother or their uncle going in the back room looking for stuff because you're grieving.
Yep.
So that's another reason why you should not have your repast at the decedent's home.
Mm-hmm.
That just should be a no-no. But what a will does is when you have the will, the personal representative is named in the will. Mm-hmm. So the personal representative is already on notice that you have intentions on what you want, how you want your property distributed. And they already have a list of your inventory. So they know what they're looking for versus you pass without a will. The person doesn't know. Somebody has to be selected as your personal representative. They have no idea what you have and what you have inventory, and then they don't know what your wishes are.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the pros and the cons of passing intestate or passing with a will. Now, just to remind you that the will and intestate, they both go through probate. The only thing that does not go through probate is a trust. So that's the difference. The will instrument and the trust instrument operates the same. It divides property to individuals. The only thing is the trust avoids probate.
Got it. I forgot. So I also wanted to add, so I did a little inventory, Miss Briggs.
Yes, ma'am.
And one of the things that came up, and I think in this era that we're in, people need to take into consideration all of the online accounts that we have,
right,
that people may not be aware of.
Right.
And in doing that, I was like, oh, okay. No one would know I had these online accounts if something were to happen to me. So I just started, creating a spreadsheet with everything, account numbers, and how contact numbers in which to, just to have access to. So I think that's something that would come up in conversation and speaking with a professional such as yourself, because we don't take these. I mean, honestly, I forgot I had some of these online savings accounts and things of that, Robinhood accounts, your Cash App, by cash. So.
Right. And those accounts, you can pass those, whatever's in those accounts, you can pass those on through the will. You can use your will device to say whatever residue I have in this account, it can go to this person. I want it to go to that person. That's definitely something you can do. But yes, you're correct. When you inventory, you know what you have, and you're just making it a lot easier for your personal representative to carry out your wishes. So that's why it's very important to make sure you do your estate plan and you inventory everything that you have.
Mm-hmm. I want to jump just for a second back to you mentioned that a lot of your clients understand or they're very definitive about who they don't want to have something. And I think that was a good spin on it, instead of knowing who you want to give it to, who you don't want to give it to.
Who you don't want to give it to. Exactly.
And I want to touch on two things. So without an estate or will, is it correct that whether it be these relatives coming out of nowhere could then challenge or request certain things that you may not want them to have? Is that?
Yeah, and Yeah, most definitely. That's what the probate process is all about. So if you die intestate and it gets in probate court, they're going to send letters to your creditors first.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the state of Florida, you have 2 years if you want to claim a rights to a decedent's property. There's a 2-year statute of limitation. So yes, they can definitely come into court and say, no, I definitely should be an heir and I want to take part. I want part of this and I want a say so. And so it could just definitely get held up in court.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about a process that could be 4 months that can end up being 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what you left behind.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times in our culture, our parents before us, they typically did only leave a house. But now we're starting to accumulate wealth as professionals. We're not just leaving houses, we're leaving jewelry, we're leaving expensive purses, we're leaving things of value behind. And so it's very important that you itemize that and you know who you want to have it, or most importantly, who you don't want to have it.
And I'm going to be messy for 1 minute. So let's talk about, because we're talking about relationships. So can we just delve into a little bit on how impactful or needed a will is when you have unwed couples or people in relationships, and how the estate or the will or just what's being left can be impacted by those relationships? Because I know usually, depending on the state, of course, there is an order in which things should be given. But if you had a couple that has been together for 20 years and they've never been married, how is that impacted? How is a will impacted? Or how is a lack of a will impacted?
So the lack of the will is, they're not married. So in the state of Florida, you have the elective share. If you were married, you would get the elective share.
Excuse me. What's elective share?
So the elective share in the state of Florida is basically, if you're married to the person, you can claim the elective share of 30% of the elective estate. So let's say that the estate is $1 million. No matter what that will dictates, you can claim as the spouse 30% of the elective estate. So that's important to know. So if you're with somebody in these cohabitation situations, you automatically X yourself out of that possibility because you're not a spouse. So that person, if they pass without a will intestate, then their assets are going to either flow up or down. If they have no kids, it's going to flow up to the parents. If they have nobody, it can cheat to the state. Once all of their creditors have been paid, that money can cheat to the state. If they die with children, then it would go down. But if you are cohabitating with them, you're not entitled. If they solely own that, if you partially own it, then yes, you would have a right to it. But if it's solely theirs, you would have some difficulties trying to claim that.
And that's why a will would then definitely be important to let, after you've passed, what do you want or who do you want to have included in X, Y, and Z? Okay.
Right. And then just so we, this just happened with the passing of Chadwick Boseman. Mm-hmm. He was with his girlfriend for years and he knew he was about to pass and they got married for that sole purpose. Mm-hmm. They got married right before he passed away. People aren't going to say, oh, that's why they got married. But I'm a lawyer. I'm thinking, yeah, that's why they got married. Mm-hmm. He was being smart. That was a smart decision to do, to make sure that upon his passing, whatever he had, I'm not really sure what California law is, but she would be able to take as a spouse.
Got you.
Sweet. And I think also with the non-traditional families that we have in place now, I think this is also a really good reason to plan for your, end of life. So taking into consideration, and I'm just going to throw out some non-traditional families because we're going into 2021 and it seems like this is more so the norm than anything. So we talked about unmarried couples who are together. A big thing I think we need to take into consideration is individuals who have multiple children by multiple people, and how that plays out as far as who gets what. Because again, I think if you don't have some directive in place, you are truly setting the family up for a conflict.
Right.
Yeah. So have you had any situations where
Thank God I have not.
And I know we're doing this audio, but we can see each other. Her face is
I think that would be a nightmare for most estate planning attorneys. I have not come across anything like that. The only thing I would think is that would be something that could become problematic if an individual died with children from, and let's just say someone came up in the music industry, and before that they had a bunch of kids, and now they're worth a lot of money. That process could get held up in court, in probate court, for a very long time, because now you're talking about paternity issues. Was this person even your father? So now you got to establish that. So you're talking about this, let's say they came up with in the music industry and they left $5 million. That $5 million could start to dwindle with estate costs, because now you got to pay attorneys, you got to pay court fees, you got to pay all of these fees because you did not leave a will in place just to determine paternity. Because if they had all these kids, and people are going to start coming out of the woodwork saying, I'm your child too.
And you know that happens at the funeral.
Yes. So
sister you didn't know about.
Right. So that could definitely be an issue. In preparing for this, I would just like to say the number one thing that I found is communication. Yes, you want a will and you want all of that stuff, but as in our culture, we have to do a better job of communicating about our finances and financial literacy and estate planning. We don't do a good job of that. Coming up
because we think somebody gonna kill us off, Anitra.
No,
is that what it is?
No, Arnitra, I don't know what type of raggedy ass family Sheneka has, but there's too much controversy that's going on.
Speaking for the people.
No. I don't know what people you speaking for,
Listen.
but you speaking for a group of people that they need to sit. They need to go to counseling.
I did some research before the podcast. Folks scared they're gonna get knocked off.
Oh, so you're thinking that they're scared that if somebody finds out that they have some money, I think that could be possibly true, that they're afraid somebody's going to rob them or something like that. I mean, it just depends on what lakes you hang around. If you hang around those type of people, that could be possible.
Not rob, kill. And it may not be our culture. You know, we reach out to a diverse group of people. So, you know, other cultures, you know, people will.
Right. Yeah. I'm just speaking from my experience. Growing up, that was not something that was discussed. In our, in the home.
I just think it's lack of knowledge.
Right. And so we have to do a better job with our generation, discussing with our children, our godchildren, about finances, financial literacy, discussing the next steps with estate planning, telling your kids what your wishes are. Like, that's taboo for some reason. We don't want to talk about that. That needs to be discussed. So a lot of these issues can be ironed out if we just open up the lines of communication, and your family has a better understanding of what you want. I want that. Say, for instance, you have this family home and you want this home to stay in the family. You want it to be heir property so that nobody in your family will ever be homeless. That needs to be communicated to all of the generations so that there's no misunderstanding that we are not to sell this land. We are not to sell this property. This should be heir property. These are some of the things that I'm finding that is not done, that we need to do, that line of communication just needs to be opened up.
And so can we talk about, and I think you covered it and it should be blatant, but I'm going to ask the question anyway, just so that it is crystal clear. Who should be planning their estate? Is there a certain age?
Everybody. If you have a job and you work, you should be planning your estate. Everybody should have a will. No matter the age. No matter your age. And everybody should have a life insurance policy with beneficiaries.
What? Yes. Ma'am, we're going to be frying fish and washing cars.
No, we should not be cash apping. And what's that other thing?
GoFundMe.
Where you go on and you... We should not be doing
yes.
that to put you away. That just makes absolutely no sense. The cost of life insurance is not that expensive.
It's not.
But funerals are very expensive. It costs a lot of money to bury somebody. So as soon as you start working and you start gaining income, this is something you should be thinking about. You should have a life insurance policy. If you have elderly parents, or if, you should have a final expense policy where your beneficiaries could get paid immediately to put you away. We should not be doing fish fries and GoFundMe's and Cash Apps to help with family members. Like, I just don't think you should leave that burden on your family. It's bad enough that they're already grieving for you. Now they have to come up with a way to bury you and put you away. That's just not considerate in my estimation.
And you mentioned as soon as you started working. So what people may not be aware of, that there may be some employee-sponsored benefits that could help with this process. So I think you have to be diligent as well, as early as you can, to seek those resources, whether they be something that you have to pay for or maybe offered to you free, and utilize them.
Right. And that's why I said it's important as adults that we communicate about our finances with our kids. You know, what insurances cost, what the cost of a car or a house, because when you start doing that, you start planting the seed for them to understand when they get a job, they need to be asking about the insurance plan. Do you have an insurance plan? Not how much I'm getting paid an hour, but what are my benefits? The conversation needs to go beyond that. And so we just have to do a better job of opening up those lines of communication with our children, and the generations coming up behind us to start seeking that information out, to be literate about financial planning and, what is a 401k? What is a Roth IRA? What is a spendthrift account? Like, we just need to be a little bit more better about doing that.
Mm-hmm. What other knowledge do you have for us? Because I know you have some. You wrote down some things.
I have a specific question.
No. Let her ask her. I need some knowledge.
No. I'm going to give you some knowledge with my question. Daggone it, Pasha. So listen, you spoke about wills, and earlier you touched on trust just a little bit. Can you go into the difference between a will and a trust?
So, like I said before, they both convey assets. But the thing with a trust is you're trying to avoid probate, and you're trying to do it privately. When you go through a will, when you use the will instrument, it goes through probate, and it's very public. Everything is in the public record. I can go onto the clerk of courts, put in your name, and find out exactly what's going on with your finances, how much you left. It's very open. Trust, it's very private. There are two types. You have a irrevocable trust, and you have a revocable trust. You also have some other trust options, such as a spendthrift trust, or there's another word I'm looking for. I can't think of it right now. But there's other types of trust, special needs trust. So, but basically what happens with those trusts is the assets are deposited into the trust. The trust now owns that asset. So some people put their homes in trust. If it's a irrevocable trust, the trust cannot be revoked, and the trust terms dictate what happens with that property. If it's a revocable trust, whoever created the trust while they're living can revoke the trust, but the trust avoids probate completely. So the assets are distributed, everything is distributed according to the terms of the trust. Trusts are a little bit more complicated than wills, and so they cost a little bit more. So a lot of people tend to go the will route because of the expense cost for the will for creating a trust, because you have to do the trust documents, and then you have to actually do the conversion of placing that property into the trust. So whether it's a bank account or if it's a home, if it's a home you're conveying into the trust, the home now has to be deeded in the trust name. So it could become a lot more expensive. So that's why a lot of people shy away. I would say if you have significant assets, that would definitely be the way to go. Especially in that scenario you were talking about, Sheneka, where people don't want to get off. You want it to be closed and very private. So that's when you would go the trust route.
Got it. That was a good question, wasn't it, Pasha? Go ahead, give it to me. Give it to me.
Arnitra, what else do you have for us?
Let me see. I made some notes here. I talked about, the importance of the will and the trust, making sure you have a life insurance policy, and make sure that policy is enough to cover all your final expenses.
10,000. I just need 10,000.
Well, now they're saying caskets are costing 10,000, so you're going to need a little bit more than that.
Yeah. So I was being funny and saying that because I think people do not know how much it costs to bury somebody, and I've had to do it a few times, and I think I also hear people, especially some of the older generation, they only have a $10,000 life insurance policy because then when they first got it, it was only $10,000. But honestly, you're looking at truly minimum of like $15,000, $20,000 just with somebody, and that's the basics.
Well, no, I'm gonna interject on that because I think depending on how the person wants their final decisions played out, some people don't want a casket. Some people want to be cremated and things like that. So I think that has to be taken into consideration as well, what the person actually wants. 10,000 may be enough to get someone. Some people don't even want a ceremony. They don't want to repast. They don't want all that stuff. They're just like, here, make sure that, my body is, I hate to use this word, handled with care, disposed of the way that it needs to be. And then that's it. So there may not be $15,000 that may be needed. 10,000 is doable. But I do believe the point that you were making is, and what this estate planning is, explaining what you want to have done and making sure that you have the money there so that it's not a burden on everybody else.
Right. Definitely. And then the other thing I would say, like I said before, make sure you discuss your financial intentions with your family. Make sure you pick an executor of your estate that you trust. It should be somebody who's not interested, that have no self-interest in the administration of your estate. If it's a good friend or somebody you can trust, make sure you think good and hard about who you pick. The other thing I would say is when you should update your will on a regular basis.
That's a good one.
The reason I say that is sometimes we have a will, we have kids, and then we get remarried. And we never look at that will again. Well, now that spouse in the state of Florida, they can take what's called a pretermitted spousal share, a probate share, which is 50% of the probate estate. That's in Florida. So it's just a lot of considerations you need to think about. Estate planning touches on every aspect of our life. It touches on when you get married, when you purchase a house, when you accumulate resources, your business. If you have a business, you need to say clearly whether you want the business to be dissolved, if you want it to go on, what do you want to happen with the business profits, all of those things. And right now with COVID, everybody is opening up a business. Have you determined what you want to happen with those business accounts? Those are some of the things we just need to start thinking about. And I think we just need to do a better job of thinking about that when it comes to estate planning.
I also want to kind of ask about guardianship. So you have a significant segment of the population that are single parents. And, the other parent may or may not be involved, and you may have a situation where you have a blended family. So you've remarried, and let's say the new spouse has not adopted the child, and you still have a father out there. And let's say you don't want your child going to, is there anything that you can put in place? I know you the father, but you have not been involved whatsoever. But what I do know is when money comes into the picture, they may come in and want to claim the child now because they know there's money associated with this minor.
Right.
So how can one avoid that or prepare for? I know. I'm getting messy. I know. I'm pushing the limits because that's what's out here. That's what's out here, Arnitra.
So that's a very good question. And again, the answer is going to vary by your state jurisdiction. But basically, unless that father's rights have been taken away as a parent, there's really nothing you can do. Most states look at it as the best interest of the child. And so if you pass away and you have a father out there that has not been declared an incompetent parent, then he can most definitely come in if that is a minor child and say, I want my kid. I want to be a parent of my kid. And they can oversee those assets. But what you could do if you have significant assets, what you could do is to protect that child, if you think the parent is not good or irresponsible, you could put that money into a trust and hold that into a trust until that child becomes 21. And then that money would be distributed to the child at age 21, and then they can do what they want to do with the money. So there's some mechanics and some vehicles that you can use to circumvent that. But you really can't cut off a parent's right to a child unless they've been declared unfit by the courts.
Got it. See, I be coming up with scenarios. I know what's going on out here in these streets, and I'm just trying to put it out there.
Pasha, you look like you're thinking. Are your wheels turning?
They are turning. I wanted to ask, is there a difference is a living will, is that included in the estate, or is that a different type of planning that people need to be concerned with incorporating the living will process?
So the services that I offer that all together. I'll ask them, do you want the living will? Do you want the power of attorney, the healthcare surrogacy? I suggest doing all of that at one time. But most definitely you should have that healthcare directive and what do you want for end of care, palliative care, all of that good stuff. All of that should be in there. So also you should definitely have a power of attorney that gives your representative the right, say for instance, you become very ill in your final stages and you're incapacitated and you can't go to the banks and you can't really handle your finances. That power of attorney will definitely give your personal representative the means to go into the bank and make sure your bills are paid and handle your finances. Again, make sure you pick somebody that you definitely trust, that is not going to be siphoning off your funds while you're sick. But most definitely, you should definitely consider all of that. And I do offer those services as well.
Arnitra, can I include a pet that I may have? Can that be included in my will?
Are you devising? Are you giving?
Nobody care about no dog.
I said a pet. So some people have, different kinds of pets, horses, things of that nature. Can you also have your wishes for that pet? Can you?
Now, I haven't seen anything like that. I have heard where people have put in a will that they want certain amount of monies to go to the care of their pet, and they'll say, I want this person to take care of the pet, and this is the funds. So I think that would just be based on your jurisdiction. You'd have to look into that, but I think that's definitely something that you could do
for the pet lovers.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people do leave money for the care of their pets. Yeah.
I like how you brought up businesses, especially with COVID. And you're right. Everybody's having a business as a means to survive. Or maybe it's a brainchild or a thought that they had and they're like, hey, well, let me just go ahead and do it. And I think a lot of people may not be thinking about that concept of all of these small businesses that they're opening up, whether they're generating a lot of revenue or a little bit of revenue. They don't incorporate that as a personal asset per se. And they think about the house and the car and whatever, but these businesses as well. I would have never thought about that. I'm glad that you brought that up because something happens.
Because you have to determine whether you want that business to go on. And if you do, then you have to have a conversation with the person that's going to take that business on. If you don't, then you have to say, I want it to be dissolved and how it's going to be dissolved according to your state jurisdiction. You could have monies in your business account. what's going to happen with that money? You need to make sure that all of that is inventoried and accounted for upon your death. So it's definitely something you have to look into. What I'm finding out with running a business, that is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job. So we definitely, if you're putting all of that into a business, then you definitely want to make sure if something happens to you that you're putting steps in place to make sure that it's dissolved properly, or if you want it to continue on, how it continue on.
Okay. Sheneka, do you have any more ghetto scenarios?
Hey, let me reach into my bag of tricks. So yes, I do. And it's not a ghetto scenario. It's a very realistic scenario. Single people, I'm talking about myself. Single people, no kids.
That would be me.
Yeah. Single people with no kids. I once upon a time, and I know I've been talking to you back and forth about getting some things in place, but one of the things, and you mentioned this earlier, we tend to say, well, I don't have anything. Well, I don't really have anything. I have a life insurance policy, but again, we're talking about houses and cars and whatever else I have laying around here. My nice laptop Pasha likes to talk about all the time.
Don't nobody want that shit. It's raggedy as hell.
Whatever. Everybody isn't a part of the Apple cult, okay?
Right.
So things that single people with no children should take into consideration.
They should definitely take all of those things into consideration, especially the professional single people. We tend to spend a little bit more on basic things.
So who you gonna leave that BMW to, and who you gonna leave?
Right. Or even just your throw rug.
Yeah.
I was talking to a client one day and she was just on the house, and I said, well, I've been in your house and you have a really nice throw rug. Somebody might want to fight over that. Have you considered? And she was like, well, I didn't even think about that. But these are the things that we have to think about. What we don't see as a value, somebody else might see it as a value. And so that can become a part of your residuary estate. So you have to say to your personal representative what you want to have done with your residue. Do you want your paintings? A lot of us are buying these expensive paintings, and those things have value. So we have to consider that. And so that was a conversation I had to have with the client. She had to decide where she wanted her expensive paintings to go to. These are some of the things that we just have to think about that we don't. We typically tend to just think about the house. A lot of people really don't think about the car, because I think most people are leasing right now. So they're like, oh, whatever, I don't care about that. But they're really solely thinking about this house that I took 30 years to pay a mortgage on. But you also have the things you put inside that house. Your artwork, your furniture. Some people spend a lot of money on furnishing their homes. And so those things have value. And do you want it to be sold and to become a part of your residue, your residuary estate? Who do you want to get your residue? That's another question, because a lot of times we just want to focus on the house, but we don't focus on, okay, there could be a residue estate after everything is sold of about $20,000. Where do you want that to go? Who do you want to get that? So those are some of the things you just have to really think about.
Got it.
With there
I
being,
think I'm finished with my scenarios, Pasha.
thanks. Let's move on to the bougie and get away from the ghetto. So generally speaking, when someone has a will, does that will need to be filed with some type of entity, whether that be a government entity, in order for it to be official? I know that there's a lot of services out there like the Legal Shields and Legal Zooms that are making the will, at least completing a will, making that process a lot easier. So how do you ensure that your will, and I'm going to air quote this, how do you ensure that your will is valid, official, and done in a manner so that it can be legal once you have expired? I'll use that word.
I'm so glad you asked that question. That is a very important question. The first thing I would say is stay away from LegalZoom and all of those other things because every jurisdiction has its requirements for validating a will, for executing a will. And if you execute that will the improper way, your will not be deemed valid. So the first thing is you want to go to an attorney. That's why we're here, because we know the rules. In the state of Florida, for a will to be valid, it has to be executed in the presence of 2 witnesses, and it has to be notarized, and the notary has to be present. A lot of people don't know that. So if you go on LegalZoom or whatever Legal Shield and you print it out and you take the will to grandma and you have her sign, and then you have 2 other people sign on a different date, your will is not valid. So it wasn't executed properly. So that's why you want to go to a legal professional. But what happens is once your will is executed and notarized properly, I would suggest giving a copy to whoever you named as your executor, and making sure your attorney should have one on file and you should have one on file. You should also discuss with everyone you named in your will that you named them in the will, so that they will know.
And that you have a will.
Right, and that you have one. They need to know. But once you pass away, the will has to be filed in the state of Florida. I believe it's 10 days in probate court. And that's when the whole probate process will start to determine the validity of the will. And then the courts will issue the administration documents to the executor to go ahead and carry out your wishes. So that's how it's done. But you do not have to file it with anybody once it's properly executed. It's filed after your death.
That's good to know. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are using these self-service methods.
Yeah, they are. They are.
Even if that means downloading some software from, and I think there's some companies that make this software that you can download and get it from Staples, Office Depot, and things like that. And I'm pretty sure that without having that knowledge of legality, as you just explained, they could be walking around with an invalid will at this point in time. Exactly.
And again, I can only speak on Florida law. I know you guys are in Georgia. Every jurisdiction on how to execute a will is different. There's all kinds of ways to execute a will and for a will to be deemed valid. But that's why I say it's very important that you go see a legal professional in your jurisdiction to make sure that it is executed properly. Otherwise, you just have a document and it cannot be deemed valid. And then your stuff will 9 times out of 10, if it's deemed invalid in probate, then it will flow through intestate. And now you don't have any decision. Of course, you're dead, but you have no decision on where it goes. It could go to the person you didn't want it to go to in the first place.
We can end up with those Sheneka scenarios.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Gotcha. So now,
we will be having a car wash, all hands on deck.
So we're kind of at the end of this podcast, and we definitely had a lot of information that was shared, useful information. But one thing that I want to leave us with is, if someone was preparing a meeting with someone who was going to be doing their estate planning, what would you tell them, or how would you tell them to prepare for that meeting?
I would tell them to definitely, when they go to the meeting, have an understanding of everything you have and what you want and how you want everything to be distributed. Don't just focus on the big items, the house and the land or the car or the boat. But I would say you definitely need to do the work. What I found, some of my clients, I just think they're just lazy and they don't want to do the work of inventorying their assets. That is work, but it's necessary work. If you're going to pay a lawyer to do this work and you want them to give you the best service, the best thing to do is to make sure you inventory what you have, and you say, this is my list of inventory. These are my list of bank accounts. Like Sheneka said, these are the online accounts that I have. This is the stash account, the Robinhood account. Make sure you give all the more information you give the lawyer, the better. It's the same thing as going to your doctor. Your doctor cannot give you a diagnosis if you just keep saying my toe hurt. Mm-hmm. If you won't tell them what else is going on in your body, they cannot properly diagnose you. It's the same thing with us in law. If you give us part of the story or part or pieces, then we really can't give you the best product that we have to offer. So that's one of the biggest things that I found is it's almost like pulling teeth, trying to get clients to itemize everything.
I know a lot of us don't want to deal with this subject. I think I have just come to the realization within 2020, maybe it's COVID. I don't know. Maybe it was the vid that made me I had to look at life in a different manner and get to this challenging subject of making sure that what I want is executed when I'm no longer here. Because a part of life is going to happen. And you use the word, which I 100% agree with, burden. Things become a burden and an unnecessary burden when I think if you would have just try to do your due diligence while you're here, that would be one less burden that people would have to deal with. So,
yes,
absolutely.
Good stuff.
It is.
So, one of the things you did not mention, can you tell us how someone will get in contact with you? The name of your company, contact information, all of that good stuff.
Okay, good. So so my business is Legal Logistics Group, and you can find me on the web. I am at legallogisticsfirm.com, and my contact number is 352-508-7275. And all you have to do is go on the consultation page on my website. You can see all the services that I offer. And if you fill out the consultation form, I will get back with you in 24 hours. So.
And this is specifically for residents of Florida, because
residents of Florida, yes.
Got it.
Yes,
okay.
Florida residents.
Awesome. And I'm assuming with COVID, all of this can be handled online.
Yes, that's the really good thing. COVID is a blessing and a curse. I'm starting to find out. The good thing is that you don't have to take off your job. You don't have to come into an attorney office these days. Everything right now is being handled online. We can even notarize the documents virtually. So that's the good thing.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. This has been a great discussion.
Arnitra,
we started off a little rocky.
Arnitra, thank you for providing us with this information. And again, Florida peeps, reach out to her for your estate planning. You want to go ahead and go with a professional, and she is one. So we want to thank you guys for tuning in to this episode. And until next time, peace.
This is Real Talk with Pasha B.